everyone. Welcome to the June 9th, 2015 joint meeting of the Glendale Successor Agency and the Glendale Economic Development Corporation. May we have the roll call for the Successor Agency, please?
Agency members Devine.
Here.
Friedman.
Here.
Garpetian.
Here.
Tananian. Chair Najarian.
Here. May we have the roll call for the Economic Development Corporation?
Board members Devine.
Here.
Friedman.
Here.
Garpetian.
Here.
Tananian. Chair Najarian.
Here. May we have your report?
The agenda for the June 9th, 2015 joint public meeting of the Glendale Successor Agency and Economic Development Corporation was posted on Thursday, June 4th, 2015 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And what's the first item?
Minutes of the Special Successor Agency meeting of June 2nd, 2015.
Is there a motion for the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. With no objections or corrections offered, the minutes will be deemed approved as submitted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item number 2, Director of Economic Development regarding the Alex Theater 2014-15, first and second quarterly reports from Glendale Arts and the annual audit. 2A, Successor Agency motion to note and file the first and second quarterly reports and the annual audit.
Mr. Director.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Successor Agency and the Economic Development Corporation, we are presenting the first and second quarterly report for the period July through December 2014. Under the terms of our ground lease and management agreement, Glendale Arts is required to report on the Alex Theater, the activities of the Alex Theater, which is the subject of your staff report. So we pulled those numbers out. The transmittal letter that was sent to you, however, and is attached, really gives a complete picture of how the Alex Theater fits in with the other, call them departments, of Glendale Arts and the rest of their programming. So you have both of those pieces of information. Your staff report pulls out what's required for the Alex Theater itself. Highlights from these last 2 quarters: net income was up on both quarters, although the first quarter, the summer quarter, still showed a net loss. That is typical of downtime during the Alex Theater. One thing that has happened, and you'll see in upcoming, is the use of furloughs. So when the business is not there, the employees, the staff, will be furloughed, and then those costs are reduced. Try and do it far enough advance so they can find work elsewhere in the industry. But that should keep in check, and one of the things going forward, those expenses. I would say the days of activity, both are up with a little bit of a twist. On the first quarter, those are up from our last previous quarters. That was when we were closed for the expansion, as well as when there was not the business during the summer and employees were not furloughed, so we were taking on the expense. While the numbers are up from those previous years, they are still pretty meek compared to some of the robust years in the early 2000s when we had more activity in that quarter. So something that the theater is working on. Conversely, the second quarter with 74 dates is the most activity we've had in any quarter at the Alex Theater since we entered into this arrangement in 2008. Things on the turn up. The types of programs that we had during these 2 quarters, they varied from talk shows to dance to theatrical, both musical and dramatic, fundraisers, community events, dance, film, so a wide range meeting that objective of the City Council to make the Alex Theater more than just a rental house or a one-trick pony. Looking forward, the future is bright. For the upcoming year, the Glendale Arts has a target of 225 days. That's up from 200, so their target is 225. Today, before the year has started, they've already confirmed or have contracts out on 139 days. They also have holds on 51 days for a total of 190. Again, that would be terrific if going into the current year we had that many committed days. The partner program, this is something new where it's for business and individuals, has grown in the first year. $72,000 was raised as part of that program. This year, going into this year, committed for starting July 1, already have $9,500 pledged in that program. I would tell you that all of our capital improvements that are required under the ground lease have been completed. The biggest one being the expansion, but we did others, carpet, painting, some rigging repair, and others. Those, excuse me, are all now complete. Two other kind of quarterly activities that I'd like to brief you on. As of today, I got notice the city has officially taken title of the Alex Theater. If you'll remember, the successor agency directed that to go to the city as part of your long-range property management plan. That was approved by the Department of Finance. We wanted to wait until we finished all of those projects. We have completed that, and so it's now title rests with the city. We'll see what kind of other activity the state requires of us, but for now, that property sits with the city of Glendale. The second is the ground lease and management agreement that were set to expire in August of this year. We have talked to you a little bit about that. We've begun some preliminary negotiation with Glendale Arts to extend that lease and the ground lease, the lease and the management agreement. We've talked to them about a few things, and this was something that we talked about during budget. We would like to propose a fee for them. We really got slowed down almost to a halt during those 2-3 years of dissolution, where the question of the ownership of the theater was up in the air, as well as whether we would have to even sell it off or not. So we'll be looking at some kind of fee. I'll bring all that forward to you. I've also talked to the theater about anticipating this, that any fee that is paid or any compensation be treated as restricted funds for something that the council could designate.
I'm sorry, this is a fee the Alex Theater would pay us?
No, if we were to pay them a management fee, those funds be restricted to certain uses. You can designate what that is. In a preliminary chat with the executive director, that should be fine. Probably my recommendation to you would be similar to our improvement or facade grant programs. Put it into the building so that if anything happens to the tenant, you still have an improved building. That seems to be an agreeable tact, so we'll be looking at that. My timing on that is I hope to have briefings with you even as early as next week, but then we'll bring this back, the business terms, back to you in mid-July. One final thing, one final item you have, kind of goes along with the ground lease and the management agreement, is the annual audit. That is complete and is included in your packet. The audit's a good audit, and it shows that everything is represented fairly and appropriately. It does list a concern as the ground lease and the management fee being important for the ongoing concern of the Alex Theater. So that is probably the one area that's highlighted from the audit that I think if the council were to enter into an extension would take care of that. Other than that, the audit looks good. Last, I would say that the current chair, executive director of Glendale Arts, and their financial representative from Sad Velasquez is here if you have any questions. Certainly the staff can answer.
Okay, thank you. Comments, Mr. Carpetian?
A couple of questions. How long is the lease, if you renew it, or how long was the previous lease?
The previous lease we entered into in 2008, and we purposely set it to terminate with the termination of the central project area in August of 2015. Going forward, we might propose something more standard to the industry, 5 years plus a 5-year option.
And the option is up to the management company to exercise it? Or
that's to be negotiated, but I would say that it's a negotiation between the two of us.
And
the
you
two
say-
parties.
And you say ground lease and management agreement. What is that ground lease? Who's leasing the
I really should say it's a lease for the building at the Alex Theater and all of the property around it.
So the management company is leasing the Alex and then managing the property for us? Is that how?
Correct. And part of that is to give them an interest in the property to then go out and raise campaign funds. If they were merely a manager without an interest, somebody could say, well, all right, I'm giving you the money, but do I know you're going to be there tomorrow? With a ground lease, they can say we have a lease interest in the property for that term. And it is more favorable to somebody that is considering contributions.
But they're not paying for that lease, or are they paying for the lease?
They're not.
They're not paying for the lease. Okay. All right.
Ms. Devine?
I just want to say a couple of things. First, I know that the staff at the Alex and the board is working very, very hard to make sure that it remains fiscally stable. And I'm happy to hear that you exceeded your goals, your revenue goals. I thought it was particularly interesting in the report that the Alex Theater can generate as much as $500,000 to the in economically with the restaurants and businesses and other activities that people do when they come to the city. So I'm so happy to hear, because that was one of my questions. You know, it's like an elephant in the room. Is the Alex ours, or is it, you know, the state's? So now we have a firm answer. The residents, when they ask us, we can firmly say it is now ours. Correct? It is now ours, and that's great news. I thought it was interesting that your concessions have gone up, and you're going to, you know, that's I guess, is that record sales and the sales of you know, what your artists bring in? Is that when you mentioned concessions? Melissa, thank you.
Thank you. Committee, we allow. Going back. Why aren't we selling those in-house? And at that time, we had an outside person taking care of that, and they paid us a small percentage. Now that we are about 3 years into it, we can really see this as a large growth potential. And we're looking at new products to bring in the future. Box lunches that we can sell online. People can enjoy dinner in the forecourt before a show or during intermission. Expanded product offering and that sort of thing. So we really see that as one of our largest growth opportunities for earned income.
Great, great. Good ideas for, you know, I admire all of you, because you're thinking outside the box, trying to bring different means of earning, you know, bringing your profits up. So it's great. And I also had a question about an update on the number of dates that were booked, and now it's up to 190. And that was like, how many are potential, or?
Well, we have 365 days in a year. Obviously, our Fridays through Sundays are our most popular, but what we're seeing now, due to the efforts of the staff who focuses on rentals, is that we're really starting to increase our weekday rental business. So our ultimate goal, or the goal that's in our budget projections through 2020, is to get to 250 days per year. And that's sort of the cap that we feel is manageable given the current composition of the staff, as well as keeping the theater maintained when there is downtime. We have almost a 90-year-old facility, and one of the things we take great pride in is the stewardship and the maintenance of the building. So because of that, we know that there are a certain number of days that we need to keep the building offline in order to conduct that maintenance. So we see that 250 is a really comfortable number and something that's very obtainable.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Carpetian.
Let me come back.
The challenges that you have. What are your challenges that you have at Alex as far as maintenance goes?
As far as maintenance goes, well, right now, as you and I have discussed at length, we have our spire that's looking kind of shabby, which our goal is over the next couple of months, we're raising $75,000 to restore the spire, bring it back online by our 90th birthday, which is September 4th. So that's one of our primary goals. Everything from elevators to lighting to exit signs to ongoing paint, ongoing maintenance of lighting, air conditioning. I mean, it really, you know what it's like to be in the commercial real estate business. One day you can fix your air conditioner and the next day your boiler can go out. One day you can replace your lighting grid and then your sound grid goes out. Right now, thanks to the efforts of the Successor agency, we are about as high-tech, ready to rock and roll as any other venue in the area and as some of our competition. So right now we're in really great shape. We have, however, presented to the Economic Development Department a 10-year capital improvement plan, which will be included in our lease and management agreement, I believe, of projects that we identify on an annual basis between now and certainly the end of our first term, which would be 2020, and then the end of our second term, which would be 2025. And those things include everything from recarpeting to exterior paint to updating boilers and replacing sound equipment. So it's a pretty detailed capital improvement list that Glendale Arts, for the most part, is committed to funding. And these were all projects that were previously funded either as a partnership between Glendale Arts or the former ACTS Regional Theater Board and the GRA, or they were solely paid for by the GRA or Successor agency.
And your fiscal year starts when?
Fiscal year is July 1.
July 1. So the 172 dates booked is from July on.
Correct.
And the goal was 200, maybe 250.
Yeah, unfortunately this year we didn't get the kind of bump in the first quarter that we had anticipated coming out of the expansion. That was one issue. The second issue is we've had an unusually high number of cancellations, both in the third and the fourth quarters. The good news is we do collect some sort of penalties for those cancellations. The bad news is that we lose those bookings and those shows, which help us with our labor offsets and some of our other reimbursable expenses.
Okay. So with this 172 bookings, are we going to be very close to our second quarter?
Well, the good news is that year-to-date numbers right now, even though we're below what our goal was for bookings, we're actually ahead of budget in terms of our rental and earned income. So when we looked at the numbers over the last couple of days, and even coming out of the third quarter, we're about $26,000 to $30,000 ahead in that earned income stream, even though the number of dates are lower. So we anticipate being ahead of the game financially, but just being disappointed in terms of being able to hit that goal in our first year.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I have a question, and you maybe can answer that.
I'll stick around.
But Phil, you talked about a time period in the early 2000s where bookings were up and revenues were up. What was going on then? And is there any way we can emulate, whether it was the marketing or the types of shows, or what was going on then that was such a good hot season?
I actually misspoke. I really meant to say the early 2010s, because what we did is we looked back 2 or 3 years in finding the average and said, we're up from that. But if you go back even further, and Lisa maybe can tell you a little more, as you go back further, there was certainly more business than 41 dates, albeit it was a dry summer. I think what we have found is that with the expansion, we've started to identify the types of shows that people in Glendale will either go to see or people will come to Glendale to see, and been very particular about what shows we're producing. And so the list that you see there is representative. I don't know if we were doing those. We certainly weren't doing musical theater like we planned to, but whether we were doing those in 2010, but there was just more business. And it was also pre-recession.
And I can also add to that, first quarter is traditionally slow in indoor theater spaces, especially in our region. You've got the Greek, you've got the Hollywood Bowl, you have all these wonderful outdoor venues, you've got free concerts. So indoor traditional performing arts doesn't really happen. What was huge for us in some previous summers were large summer replacement television productions. So for example, we had 2 to 3 summers of Last Comic Standing, which took 6 to 8 weeks of time at the Alex Theater. We have not been able to benefit from that. Certainly when we were closed last year, and because certain summer replacement shows taped in the spring last year, we weren't able to capture that business for the summer. We have a fairly slow summer again this year, but we're using that as an opportunity to finalize some maintenance projects that we've deferred over the last 18 months, including the replacement of the stage floor, moving of some monitoring equipment, some other backstage and front of house repairs. So we're using the time, whereas last year we furloughed a lot of our staff to reduce our costs. This year we made a concerted effort to reinvest in the venue and keep our staff occupied in that way. So again, unfortunately, we do have a better first quarter date-wise than we did the previous year, but the successes that we had that Phil noted really go back to those summer replacement productions, which has been a primary focus and goal of the folks that are managing the rental department at Glendale Arts, and they're really looking to do that in conjunction with some other projects like a summer camp theater program that we're working on for next summer as well. So we're sort of at that point where if we can't go out and attract business, we're starting to look at ways that we can start to build business on our own. And one of those ways is to develop an arts summer program that's specifically geared towards kids. They can participate both at the theater and as well as in the community. So we're trying to look at, as Paul astutely noted, trying to look at a variety of different and creative ways to fill dates, whereas before we were just like, these dates are not getting filled.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, if there's no other comments, this is a motion to note and file for the successor agency.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Agency members Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Sinanian, Chair Najarian.
Yes. Would someone like to move for adjournment?
So moved.
Okay. We are adjourned for the successor agency, and how about for economic development?
Make the motion to adjourn.
Seconded by
Second.
Fine, and the Development Corporation is adjourned also.